Well, I brought the cowlings out here to wash them off, to get all the, or most of the grease off of them before I start sanding them down and start getting them ready to try to paint. I'll probably wash them down again with paint thinner and then acetone. I want to make sure and get all of the grease and oils and stuff like that off of them before you start sanding, so it doesn't get embedded down into the leftover paint and metal and stuff like that. So you got to be real careful rinsing those off, because there's a couple of seams in there where the lapped over seams, and the detergent can get down in there, the soap can get down in there, and it's real caustic, which doesn't affect the fiberglass much, but there's some aluminum that's attached to that, like that circle right there on lower cowling for the air cleaner. That's aluminum, and that's riveted onto the fiberglass, so it's got a seam there that is not liquid tight, so the stuff gets down in between there. I'll let it dry off now, and I don't know whether I'm going to work outside here with it some more, or whether I'll take it back in the hangar. It's such a nice day out here, and it'd be a good time to be outside and get some vitamin D maybe. Wife got me a little bit of lunch ready, so I'm going to go have a bite and let that stuff dry off. Well, I guess I'm going to go all out here on this paint job. I washed that down with soap and water. It got all the grease and oil off of it. Then I used paint thinner on there, and that got some of the stuff that the soap and water would get off. It's funny how different solvents get different things off. The soap and water got most of the oil and stuff off, and got all the bugs and stuff off that the paint thinner and the acetone wouldn't touch. Now what I'm going to do is take these channels off of this lower cowling. Stuff gets down in there between the channel and the fiberglass there, and you can't get it out, and of course it'll run out as soon as you paint it and ruin the paint job. That channel has the Southco fastener receptacles on it, held on there with some flathead rivets. So I've drilled those rivets out. So I got this one off this side, and you can kind of see how grungy it is. And I think I'm going to do the same thing on the top cowl. I think I'm going to take the doors off of the top cowl, because the doors are aluminum. The top of the cowling is fiberglass. And I can use paint stripper on the aluminum. I don't really want to use paint stripper on the fiberglass, but the paint's all flaking off of that pretty bad. So it's time to get it cleaned up, and I don't think I need to do any fiberglass work on that. I've done some before on this bottom cowling here, where I had to hog out the area where the exhaust stack comes down, and then I had to put some fiberglass in there to strengthen that back up again. The paint's in pretty bad shape on it. Anyway, those are cleaned up now. I'll go ahead and strip them down a little bit more. I drilled the rivets out on those channels, both the right and the left one on that lower cowling. Took the Southco receptacles off, and then I took the Southco fasteners off the doors on the upper cowling. And instead of drilling the rivets out on the hinges on the upper cowling, I just went ahead and pulled the hinge pins out of it. That way I can get to those and clean the hinges up on both of those. Those are apart and all cleaned up. So now what I got to do is get the paint cleaned up on them and get them ready to repaint. Figure out what I'm going to do there. Well, we've had some nice weather the last couple days. Got up to about 65 yesterday. It was 70 degrees today. Supposed to be another warm day tomorrow, and then Sunday it's supposed to start clouding up in the afternoon and raining, which is just perfect because this weekend was the Little Norway celebration. The community here celebrates Norwegian Independence Day. There's big doings in town. They got picnics and all kinds of stuff there, parades, street vendors and all kinds of stuff in town, so this is perfect for them. It's considering the weather we've been having and as cold as it was. They really lucked out on that. I pulled the pins out of the hinges on the doors on the upper cowl half. Yesterday I took them out and got some paint stripper out and went over both sides of them and stripped the paint down. And then I was kind of worried about the hinges on them, because paint stripper gets down in those holes and around in those crevices and the cracks and whatnot. If it gets wet, it reactivates and then it just burns everything. So I took those doors and stuck them hinged down in the creek out here behind the house with running water on them. I'll leave them out there for a couple days, and that should flush them out pretty good. I cleaned them up pretty good, but that should flush them out pretty good. So today I sat outside and started sanding down this top cowling, and I got that pretty well down. And then I got to looking at those hinges on there, and I just didn't like the way they were going to turn out. It's just almost impossible to clean those up. You get the scuffing the rivets on them, the rivet heads, and you don't get them all the way clean. And the hinge part, you can't get those cleaned up. And then there was grunge underneath them. They don't fit tight on that cowling there. They were riveted on, but they weren't down there tight. They flex, and so they had crud underneath them. So I just went ahead and drilled the rivets out on those and took them off. Took what was left of my paint stripper and started stripping those. I'll have to clean those up a little bit more because I didn't have enough paint stripper left, so I'll have to get some tomorrow in town. Well, I won't be able to get to town because the roads are all blocked off downtown, but Judy's down there. She was there today doing a class for Rosemallin. She's going to do a couple more classes tomorrow, so before she comes home I'll have her pick up some from paint stripper from the hardware store. Well, anyway, I got this pretty well cleaned up, but I did find a little crack in the front right above that arch where it goes over the crankshaft on the engine. Right almost dead center, there's a little crack there that goes up. But I turned it over on the backside and ground it down a little bit so I can get some fiberglass, mix up some resin and some cloth and stuff, and put a little patch on that, a doubler on the backside of it. Looking at that nose bowl portion of that's pretty well starved for resin. They didn't get a good resin coat in there. There's a lot of pockets and holes and stuff in that. But we'll get a little patch on that one. Well, anyway, like I said, I spent all day out in the sun sanding on that. I spent most of the morning out in the sun, and then my arms started getting red. I started getting a sunburn, so I moved over in the shade and worked on it there. But I got a little bit of sun today. That was pretty nice sitting out there in the weather instead of sitting in here listening to the rain drumming on the roof. Tomorrow I'll work on that bottom cowling and get it sanded down and prepped up for paint. I don't think it's as bad. I don't think the paint was peeled off of it as bad on the nose bowl as the top cowling was. The other thing I want to do on the top cowling is I want to paint that flat black up there to match the boot cowl on the airplane. So anyway, hopefully we get that done enough and get enough weather that I can get those painted while they're outside. Well, another nice day today. Sunshine. Starting to see just a few clouds. It's supposed to cloud up tomorrow afternoon and rain. But it was almost 75 degrees out there today. Anyway, I sat out there in my t-shirt and getting some anti-COVID medicine the government can't control. A little bit of sunshine, vitamin D. Arm's got a little bit red, but I got that lower cowling sanded down. There's a couple little spots I found on it that I needed to feather out down into the primer, but mostly just needed to be buffed up or scuffed up. Anyway, those things are scuffed up, ready for paint, but before I do paint it, I'm going to get some fiberglass and patch this little crack in this nose portion of the top cowling. I know where the resin is. I got to go figure out where the cloth and stuff is so I can get a patch put on that. I've got it all set for a patch. I ground it out a little bit yesterday, so I wasn't sure if I had any fiberglass cloth left or not. I got to digging around in the shop up overhead, and I found a little bucket that had some odds and ends in it, which is plenty enough for what I've got. Only problem is a mouse had made a nest in it, and you know what mice do. So anyway, this stuff was kind of dirty. You know, I went and stole a mixing bowl, a little mixing bowl out of the wife's cupboard, a glass bowl, because I was afraid I put acetone in it. I was afraid if I did it in any plastic bowls, it would eat them up. Well, I wanted to soak this stuff in here and wash this stuff out, get it cleaned up. Get the mouse and the dirt out of it and stuff. And it looks like it's coming clean. Well, this is way more than enough. Actually, this little piece right here is enough for what I need. I'll get that cleaned up here and set it out and let the acetone flash off of it. Yeah, well, that's better. That's good. These gloves hold up. Didn't expect them to hold up that good against the acetone, but they held up through that. That's about all. I made too much resin as usual. I've been using this West Systems epoxy hardener, and regular fiberglass resin, or the kind we were getting from the town and the shipwrights and stuff, I get sick on that. A few years ago my wife did interior of her boat, and whenever I'd get in there to help her and we were doing the fiberglass, I'd wind up getting sick for a week afterwards. So the West system doesn't affect me like that. And it's pretty easy to use. It's got plungers here. It's got these dispensers, pumps, and they're calibrated. So this one is smaller for the hardener, it's shorter, so it'll pump out less than what the one for the resin will. So anyway, you just use them 1 to 1, which makes it pretty easy. You don't have to weigh it or anything like that. Well, I take these gloves when I'm done with them and stick them over the pump, keep them from getting too grungy. And it's been, I think, 3 years since the last time I used this stuff. Used it on the belly tank of the airplane when I rebuilt it, when I fixed it up for the airplane. Might be even 4 years now, I don't know. At least 3 years, so that was the last time I used that stuff, and it's still good like that, so that'll help keep it. Well, I just used a little bit of this chopped up fiberglass just to fill in the little divot that I'd made in the depression I'd made in the nose bowl where the crack was. I spread some of this out there on both sides of the crack and filled that divot in, and then I used the tag end of this, the piece that was sticking out of this, to go over it, to sandwich over it or to spread out over the good stuff, and filled it up with resin. Probably used a little too much resin, but I made plenty. Yeah, that stuff's getting warm, but it's not hot. So anyway, I put this stuff all away until the next time, and see if it's 3 or 4 years till the next time I need it. Anyway, we'll let that thing harden up, let it go overnight. This stuff is a little bit slow, even though this is fast resin, it's still slower than regular fiberglass resin. So we'll go ahead and let it harden up overnight, and I'll go dig out my paints and stuff and try to get those ready to see if we can't do some painting tomorrow. Well, that fixed that cowling up really good. That stiffened it up even more than it was before. And do a little bit of trim work on there. I've got a couple fuzzes sticking out around in the opening, and true up that face there, the front on this face. It's got just a little bit of lap over where that break was on there. It's just not quite flush, but I'll get that taken care of. I've got the doors over there all dried out, and my hinges, I've got to finish stripping them. I try to get everything painted today. Still a nice day out there today, but it's starting to get a little blustery. It's supposed to start raining this afternoon, and then it's supposed to rain for a few more days until Thursday. It's supposed to open up again. Well, you never know what the future's going to be. So anyway, I'm going to try to get these painted today. We'll